Arise, giving all praises to Allah, the Father of the universe, cherisher and sustainer of all the boundless universes. I extend the highest of honors to His holy and divine prophet, Prophet Noble Drew Ali, the founder of the Moorish Science Temple of America, Islam. I extend high honors to his forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the founder of the Universal Negro Improvement Association, who did indeed warn and stir up the nations, Islam. I extend high honors to the Moorish American flag, the red flag, the Moorish flag. The red flag with the 5-pointed green star in the center. These 5 points represent love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. These are the 5 highest principles known to man. Islam. I extend high honors to the American flag, also known as the Stars and Stripes. This flag exists as the constant reminder that the European nations owe you the Moors with compound interest. Islam. This is also the flag of our birth. Islam Moors. Giving honors to noble Sheikh staff, noble acting vanguard staff who keep the peace, and giving honors to you, the ills and babes, for without you, there is no Moorish movement. Islam Moors. Praise Allah. How's everyone on the holy day? Praise Allah. Praise Allah. This evening, I want to demonstrate the principle of leadership. One thing in the Asiatic community is lacking right now, is strong leadership. Leadership, like anything else, is a degree that has to be taught. One assume that, just because you got a couple good ideas and a few people listen to you and you got a little audience, that, that makes you a leader. And that's not what makes you a leader, right? Leaders have to be sit at the feet of one and be groomed. They must go through the hall of learning and be taught. Islam? Last holy day, I opened up demonstrating the forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. And, I think I'm going to, camel back off of that this week relative to leadership. Again, drawing from Marcus Garvey's message to the people. This was the book where he taught his inner circle the structure of what he wanted for the Universal Negro Improvement Association, or the UNIA. All right. I'm going to jump down in the section of leadership, which is actually lesson 2 in this book. On page 20, I'm going to draw from a section that starts off. It says, a leader under all circumstances must carry himself with dignity. He must not be a snob, but he must maintain his pride. A leader cannot well afford to mix himself up with anything that is not dignified or self-respecting. If you have to do something that you know will be morally and socially ashamed of if someone else knows, never do it. But if you have to do it, see that you are careful that no one else knows. It's kind of similar to what the Prophet demonstrated of keep it out the eyes of the public. There's a lot of times where Moorish Americans, especially in the leadership, have a tendency of bringing their personal habits, out into the forefront so everyone can see, with no shame. The Prophet says that glory and shame are misplaced, all right? So we have to, make sure we put them back in their proper order. It says, don't carry your weakness on your face or in your eyes. Someone will detect it and you will be ruined. If you have personal weaknesses, try to conquer them and hide them as long as you can until you have conquered them. Otherwise, you will be ruined. Every man can conquer his vices by bringing his subconscious will to play upon and against such vices. In everything you do, play the gentleman. Never be a hog. It doesn't pay. You will lose a friend every time you play the hog. What the forerunner is saying about playing the hog is don't be greedy. Don't be selfish. Don't be uncivilized. You know what I mean? Like, these are the things that, again, however it's established at the top, you'll see that influence go all the way through the ranks, right? So you have to make sure that you demonstrate, like in the Moorish Science Temple of America, Prophet Noble Drew Ali is our standard. So we look at how he moved and how he presented himself, amongst the nations of the earth, and we seek to imitate that because it was successful in his day. Islam? All right? He says, keep smiling with the world even though your mother is dead. I'm gonna read that again. I don't think y'all caught that one. Keep smiling with the world even though your mother is dead. Let me just stop right there, right? Asiatic people have a problem with commitment. Like, if you just ask our sisters, how difficult is it to get a man to commit in a relationship? They give you volumes on that demonstration, right? But the reality of it is, it's not just there. You know what I'm saying? Like, everywhere you find us and where we're seeking to function, we have a problem committing to whatever that ideal is, and not just committing to it. Like, in other words, one of our Moorish elders, Sheikh Ranesi-El, we give honors to our elder, but he was always saying, come all the way into the Moorish Science Temple of America. You know what I'm saying? Like, ones might commit to it in noise of tongue. I'm in the temple. People say this, right? Or they might think in their head, I'm in the temple, but their actions don't really add up to the thought. Or they might have the prophet's nationality card in their pocket, but that card is on fire because it's not being activated. Islam. So the reality of it is, to come all the way in the temple. So, like playing your part with the world, even though your mother is dead, that means that no matter what's going on in your life, you have to play your part in the movement. You know what I'm saying? Like, and again, giving honors to, all the, the great ones that came before us, especially the leaders in the 20s, because, what they established set up, things for generations to come. Like we talked about in Sunday school, talked about the United Daughters of the Confederation, and how the things that they did, the writings that they put forth in that day set up, a period of time for like the late 40s, 50s into the 60s of those racist Europeans. And that day, they were the children and grandchildren of the ones in the 20s. You see what I'm saying? So same thing like, you look at the Nation of Islam, the Wahhabian brothers, some of the Hebrew Israelite groups, so on and so forth, and the freedoms that they enjoy in terms of being able to speak out relative to religious rights and or national rights. Those are freedoms they can enjoy because of the scars and assassination attempts and all kinds of stuff that Noble Drew Ali and Marcus Garvey went through in the 20s. Islam, and they played their part even though their mother was dead, figuratively. Islam, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit, right? But I just thought that was, noteworthy, all right? But it says, nobody is obligated to you to make you happy. So don't carry your sorrow to the world and on your sleeves. Keep them to yourself and get them out the best way you can. Leaders are not children. They must not therefore act as children, right? I'm a parent and a grandparent, and dealing with my grandbabies right here. And a lot of times, sometimes when they don't get their way, they might pout or have a little attitude or whatever, right? And I expect that because they're children, Islam. But I'm in a weird place when I see that in adults. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't really like, in the current era, brothers are walking around with more emotions than they should. So when you correct them, you find that haughty. You know what I'm saying? You don't find that soldier like Islam, I'll do better next time. You don't see that. You know what I'm saying? You get that haughtiness of like, who are you to correct me? Islam? And we can't grow that way. You know what I'm saying? That's me included. You know what I'm saying? Like if I'm in error and one of the sheiks or one of the members, anybody pulls me to the side like, Islam, we need you to tighten up more. You are leader, more. We need you to do better. That causes me to have to look at my Islam. Well, let me look at what I'm doing. What are you seeing that I'm doing that I need to correct? Islam, and seek to make a speedy reparation. You know what I'm saying? So the fact that ones might look at themselves as like, how dare you correct me for my actions? And this is how ones come to prophets of Allah. Think about that. Allah, the Father of the universe, sees out of his infinite mercy to send you a messenger, right? And you question the messenger. You kill the messenger. By the way, the messenger is not the author of the message. He's just carrying the message. So they say, don't kill the messenger, right? No, our people kill the messenger. As though killing the messenger was killed the message, and it didn't, right? Moving forward, it says, leaders must be self-possessed, confident, feeling self-reliant. When your followers see that self-confidence, they will believe in you and follow you. Always speak out right from your head and from your heart. Keep your heart and mind pure with love and your body clean with water. It says, if your heart is not in it, it is a lie. If your head is not in it, it is pure sentiment. Your heart and your head must work together. People observing you can always tell when you are sincere. That is, when you speak from your heart and your head. They can always tell when you are fooling them by looking into your eyes, and you cannot stand their gaze. At that time, indeed, you are lying. When your heart and your head is in it, your whole body expresses the truth, and you can hold any man's stare. We were taught that by elders a long time ago, look a man in his eyes. When you press a man's hand, you look him in his eyes. You know what I'm saying? Because, that shows that, you're not a snake. That you can withhold the stare. You know what I mean? That my soul is not carrying something that's adverse to you, so I can put my hand in your hand and all is well. Islam? He says, a leader must not be extravagant. He must not be flashy in the sense of being over sporty. People will not think you are serious. Always make your followers believe that you are serious. You can be serious without being sour. That's another thing too. You know what I'm saying? Is that, demonstrating, tactfulness. You know what I'm saying? Like the word tactic means strategic, right? So, it's just like even like telling the truth. Truth is one of our principles. But as we know, if you've ever studied truth, truth is harsh. Truth can cut. Like, you can tell a person the truth and they'll never speak to you again, right? But a lot of times it's the way you said it. A lot of times the way you said it. You know what I'm saying? Like, what I mean? Like, you ever took a harsh tonic? You ever drank the prophet's tea? Anybody? That demonstration's harsh, right? If you try to take it like it's on the box, you might have to take off for a couple weeks. You know what I mean? But what we do is you take it and you add some honey to it. Take a little more, put half the bottle of honey in that demonstration. You know what I mean? Just trying to sweeten it so it's, it does its job, but yet it's still, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's still going to be bitter to some degree, you know what I mean? But it doesn't have to be such a degree where you can't take it at all, And most people, when it comes to truth, like, they'll rebel from it just because of how it's presented, you know what I mean? And so being in the halls of men, one thing is you learn as how to tell the truth. You know what I mean? Like we talk about often, like over these successive weeks, if I count the number of times where we were like, change the method but not the message. You know what I'm saying? That's knowing how to tell the truth. You know what I mean? How to be a good, like we say in Arabic, da'i. A da'i is a person that gives dawah, or propagates the faith. You know what I'm saying? So in knowing how to do that, you have to know how to not oversell a thing. You know what I mean? Like you present it, you know what I mean? You give the basic essence of it, right? And you drop the flyer in there and you move on. But when you're sitting at 2-3 hours, you lost the person 45 minutes ago. They checked out. You know what I mean? That's called overselling. Islam, So so that's the whole thing. So you have to learn about how to demonstrate those degrees. Islam Morris. Moving forward, it says, always think before you speak or act. Don't write or speak just to hear yourself. Speak or write only when you have something to say, and never touch anything by way of leadership that you don't know about, because somebody who knows about it will have a joke at your expense, right? So that's another thing. So like, when you demonstrate, the prophet's degrees, right? Only demonstrate that which you become part and parcel to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Don't demonstrate a particular thing because it sounds good. You know what I mean? Or I think it would be deep to say. You know what I'm saying? Because you never know who you're talking to. You know what I'm saying? Like you might talk to somebody who they think is who you might think is a novice at the demonstration, but you don't know the path that they walk. And they'll listen to you like, he think he's impressing me with X, Y, and Z, but he's really not. And you end up really sounding like a fool. Islam. So again, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey. Islam, Brother Jalil. The Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, was trying to get us to understand, how leaders should conduct themselves. And there's a lot of moving parts to it. You know what I'm saying? And again, you don't qualify yourself as a leader just because you stand in front of people. You got to it's a degree. You got to demonstrate all the degrees that comprise leadership. If not, you're not a leader. So that's a heavy measure. All right. So a leader must always have something to say. Otherwise, he forfeits his leadership, and someone else who has something to say will supplant it. A leader should always make an effort to be known in his community. He must acquaint himself with everything that is happening. He must know the governor of the state of country, the secretary of state or his colonial secretary. He must know the mayor of his city and all the members of the legislature. He must know the bishops of his city, the administrative heads of all governmental departments, all the preachers and doctors and lawyers and prominent businessmen. Earlier today I was speaking with one of the ministers from the United House of Prayer Church, Sweet Daddy Grace's organization, and we were comparing notes about our founders, right? He was talking about Brother Sweet Daddy Grace in the 20s, right? And some of the early foundational things. Like he asked me a question. He said, what's that thing you say in your opening when you open your meeting on Holy Day? So I'm like, okay, what are you talking about? He said, about the American flag. So I know what I say, but I wanted to hear him say it to see if he was watching. And he says something about and this is the flag of our birth and the compound interest. And I'm like, oh, that's what I was watching. You know what I'm saying? But I'm like, okay, praise Allah. I said, why do you find that interesting? He said, because in all the Asiatic organizations, he says that because he's talking to me, he would normally say black. He said in all the Asiatic organizations, he's like they leave that out. No one talks about citizenship anymore. He said, I can show you early pictures of Daddy Grace when he was flying the American flag, hundreds of them, right? To prove the fact that we were citizens, right? But see, Sweet Daddy Grace came from Cape Verde, came to America and realized the value of American citizenship. Not to mention his dealings with Prophet Noble Drew Ali in the early days. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that was a very powerful thing. So I showed him pictures from the convention, 1928, right? And on that demonstration, like, if you really looking, with eyes that are pure, you can see there were more of these flags flying by the Prophet than this one. Because this is clear, we know who we are. But that ain't the message we're trying to send out there. We're trying to send like, yo, we're part and parcel of this. You know what I'm saying? So you're seeing this everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Children carrying them, adults carrying all in the background, all that type of stuff. Because that's the point, you know what I'm saying, in terms of, you know, the national part of the movement that we have to understand. You know what I mean? And then also, too, another thing I wanted to hit real quick. For those who haven't watched it, you know, I put on my Facebook page, I'm gonna see if we can put it on the Temple's page. There's a documentary called The Panama Deception. Anyone seen this? It's a must watch. It was done in, I wanna say in the 90s. Whew, Panama Deception. First of all, anybody tell me something about the people in Panama? What did they look like? Panama. From his complexion all the way to his complexion, right? So running the gambit, sometimes a little lighter. In that demonstration, it showed how, you know, in the name of, you know, allegedly wanting to, you know, to overthrow the government, install their own public government in, because they were, you know, ruled by a tyrant and all this, you know, the excuses. They went in there and slaughtered the Panamanians. You know what I mean? And when I tell you, like in the documentary, they go into, now keep in mind, this is, they invaded Panama in 1989. And I'm gonna bring this back to that. That's why I'm going here. They invaded Panama in 1989, and they were talking about, this is eyewitness reports. It said, this is when they first broke out the Black Hawk helicopter. So nobody ever seen this until they invaded. They said from the helicopter, it was like, there were lasers coming from the helicopters that were cutting cars in half. That were melting people from the helicopters. You know what I'm saying? Me and my body's watching together, it was heart-wrenching, man. And then to see, like, you know, the mass graves that were dug, where hundreds of Panamanians were just thrown, you know what I mean, thrown in a demonstration. So I'm saying that to say, ones will say that, you know, this and what it represents is the fault of that. You know, I disagree. I would say that the fact that we haven't taken our place in the affairs of this is what allows certain ones to take control of our government and do that. Islam Moors? Because where's the voice of reason to say that's, no, because that has to be allocated to do that. Funds have to be allocated for that. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, if we had our people positioned right, we could shut a lot of this stuff down. But because our people don't understand government, right? And then again, it's bigger than not just understanding government. It's like everything the Forerunner is saying that I've read so far, and everything he's already, you know, in his whole body of work has said. But knowing what a leader is, and all the things that take, your example is everything. It's literally everything. So, you know, if you're gonna go and let's say Congress or Senate, right? The people are dependent on you. You know what I'm saying? So how you conduct yourself in the office, example, why was Bill Clinton, and keep in mind my grandbabies are here. We ain't doing that tonight. But why was the impeachment trial, why did it go forth on Bill Clinton? Was it what he did? Or was it the fact that he disrespected an office that's older than him? You understand what I'm saying? You know what I mean? They had to make him realize that what you did was you disrespected an office that to them is ancient. You know what I'm saying? You know, and I think that's, you know, even in the more science temple of America, I think, you know, we lose sight of that. You know, the fact that like we have the prophets, Il and Bays and the turbans and fezzes and all that kind of stuff, whatever. I think we have a tendency to forget how ancient these degrees are, and we walk around with them in a current mind, just doing whatever in some ancient degrees, and it looks out of place because again, the world knows what these represent. They know what the turbans represent. They know what the names represent. So, you know, so on and so forth. We had an architect that was in here. He was an Asiatic brother, and like I said, I was getting him to do some blueprints for me, you know, for my barbershop. And you know, he looked at, you know, he took my name down or whatever, and then he contacted me, you know, me back. And he was talking to my wife. I was like asking, like, your last name, that hyphen and that EL, is that like part of your name? Well, she's like, yes, it is part of it. I've never seen a name constructed like that. What's that all about? You know, and then she started demonstrating the prophet. Like, you know what I'm saying? You know, we're Moorish American. That's, you know, from our cultural heritage, ties back to the empire. He's like, the Moors, like Spain Moors. Like you're a part of, yes, so are you. I need to know more about that. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, the point is that, you know, the world is depending on us to conduct that properly. You know what I'm saying? And like, you know, like the Forerunner says, like, you know, about that seriousness of leadership. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm a real jovial person until like you start playing around with my prophet's degree. 'Cause I know what he went through to bring him. You know what I'm saying? So at that point, that's when I lose, like the joke stop. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, okay, look, we gotta handle this properly. Islam. And it has to be like prophet says, you know, as handed down unto you by our the prophet. So how does he hand down his laws to us? Through our holy instructions, through our divine instructions, through his example, through the Moorish God newspaper. So we see how he moved and what worked, and we implement that. And we might have to, adapt it to our day. There's nothing wrong with that, but the foundation of it doesn't change. Islam? All right? So let's move forward a little bit. Move a little bit more, and I'm gonna yield the floor to our first speaker. Says, don't be seen with the communists too often. Now that's a dated phrase because ain't nobody worried about communism right now, right? But I was watching what was it? I was watching something. Okay, it was a city council meeting, and I think it was somewhere in the Midwest. It was like Indiana, Kentucky, and it was an Asiatic. He got into it with a European, and it was something about allocation of the budget. And he says he named about 5 or 6 different, about 3 or 4 different groups. He's like, it's not about this group, it's not about that group. He's like, we're not talking about the sovereign citizens right now. Who? You see what I'm saying? Meaning that off camera, they had a set discussion where sovereign citizen ideology came up. Right. And they have a standing protocol in place for that. And he's like, no, we're not even talking about that right now. And I thought that was noteworthy to be like, right? So, I would venture to say, don't be seen with the sovereign citizens too often.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like if you're going to, it's a lot of, I love anybody who say Allah is one and noble Jalali is prophet. I love you. You know what I'm saying? All of them ain't in the temple, but maybe we can win them if we present it right. Okay, so let's not attack them because of that. You know what I'm saying? Because I was a former one of those dudes. You know what I'm saying? And then I had to, had to compare, and the clean glass of water looked a little bit better. So I came over here. You know what I mean? But he says, don't be seen with the communists too often, if you know them. Never take part in their meetings unless you are to make a speech against their principles. And always see that it is known by the public that that is your only reason for going amongst them. Never let them call you comrade for others to hear. I'm careful of that. So anybody give me the origin of the word comrade? Anybody? Comrade, C-O-M-R-A-D-E. Because again, the prophet taught us to speak a certain way. That's not a portion of the verbiage that he handed down to us. So when I hear Moorish Americans say comrade, I want to correct it, but I don't want to be radical. So I just want us to look it up. Islam, brother Jalil, what you got? Comrade.
Comrade. Wise, all praise to Almighty God Allah. Never sent the merciful.
Yes, sir.
Have honors. The Holy Divine Prophet, Prophet.
Islam, more. Recognize.
So Rashi Google says that comrade has a Latin root, which is camera, chamber, camarada, Spanish, roommate, French, camarade, and then comrade. So it says camera, it says chamber or roommate, so like room, kind of sharing something.
What political ideology made the term comrade popular? Anybody know? Do any basic, studies on Marxism and so on and so forth? This is where the term, gained popularity. And amongst the so-called early, quote unquote communists, that was a term that they used, comrade. Whatever. Ones that studied Marxist ideology, you get Panther era in the 60s, stuff like that. They picked it up because a lot of the political ideology they were studying was Marxism. You know what I'm saying? Socialism, so on and so forth. So what I'm saying is the Forerunner is warning us about being called that in the open, right? Because what they say, there's connotative and denotative meanings of words. You know what I'm saying? And the connotations surrounding the term comrade deal with something that happened in this country, right? And you don't necessarily want to identify yourself with that. You understand what I'm saying? Does that make sense to the Moors? So this is what the Forerunner is warning us about, right? He says, you must seek to know all people you want to be in your organization. Visit their homes, their workplaces, and anywhere you can meet them, and always extend to them a glad hand. Or like the prophet says, on your jobs, homes, on the public streets, right? He says, always be diplomatic in your approach. If an Asiatic is in company with a European man, never talk to him about the UNIA or the MST event. Right? Because again, that's a foreigner. Don't speak our plans in front of him. Anybody ever seen Khalid Muhammad's interview on Donahue? Donahue asked him, says, well, what is your end goal, Mr. Muhammad? Like, what do you plan? He says, no wise general sits down with a representative of the opposition to discuss his plans.
That's right.
Right? And see, again, that's a part of the maturity that we need, because a lot of times in our quest to be deep, we get before the world and talk about family business. Social media included. Social media is the equivalent of what the prophet said, the public streets. You know what I'm saying? You know, that radical and agitating speech while on your homes on the public streets. So that's social media as well. So when Moors fall out one another, I commend Brother Raphael Hakeem responded to a sister's post earlier, and he was like, I just don't get why, I don't want to slap up your post, but he says, I don't get why Moors take to social media, you know, I mean, to talk about what's going on inside the temples. You know what I mean? Like, if this is somebody that you know that you fell out with, if you know them, you press hand with them, you can go to the temple, pull aside, and talk with them. You know what I'm saying? Why go through a virtual medium to talk to them? It's retarded, A. B, and I know that wasn't politically correct, but I'm sorry, it is what it is. And at the same time, it's just like, you know, it's irresponsible, right? Because now, how many millions of people are watching, not to mention governmental agencies? So now we're giving up our weaknesses, our weak points, or the chinks in our armor to ones who may seek to do us harm. Is that wise at all? Does that make any sense? And is that leadership? You know what I'm saying? So, you know, these are the things, like, you know, I try not to, like, be about censoring ones, you know, like freedom of speech. We're in America, you know, but it's like, we're called, that's why we read our laws, our divine laws in the beginning of every meeting. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I had a sister tell me one time that this was a member of the Most High Temple of America. I didn't know we were supposed to pay dues. Oh, sis, you in the beginning of, you know, she's been at the beginning of meetings. I didn't know I was supposed to pay dues. Well, sis, remember Acts 7? Must pay their dues and keep in line with all necessities, more science. That's read every meeting, right? You see what I'm saying? You know, but this is what I'm saying. Like, but if you didn't understand that, you know what I'm saying, and you knew that ones were, maybe I need to ask. You understand what I'm saying? You know, but you have to be a part of your, like, you know, part of all parts of your movement. You know, I mean, that's the degree of the hammer, right? To drive it in, tell us what? Part of every part, you know. Moving forward, he says, always be diplomatic in your approach. Okay, I read that. Moving forward, it says, if he is in a company with someone who you think is not in sympathy with the UNIA or the MSTFA, don't talk to him about the MSTFA. I just say that. Wait until he's alone. Never say anything to one person who may be in sympathy with the UNIA or the MSTFA in the presence of 2 or 3 people, unless you know that the others are also sympathetic, because when you are gone, the others may try to undo the good relationship. In the Quran of the great Quran of Muhammad, it says, they're those that while they're with you, they say they're with you. But when they go back to their friends, they say, I was only mocking them. That's the saying, right? And we're careful with that, right? Because that's what that is. Because the word munafiq, you know, in Arabic, that's like, it's the second worst thing in Islam to be. Like, first is to bind partners with Allah. And the second is to be a hypocrite. To say you're going to do one thing and do another. You know what I'm saying? Because in our cultural ways, that's just, how can you be dependable in our society? You see what I'm saying? All right. Says, but when you meet Asiatic strangers, you may talk to all of them about the aims of the MSTFA and try to win them over. Never divide or create confusion between the different colors of the Asiatic race, his language. Always try to prove that the standard Asiatic is the African, and that all Asiatics should be proud of their Asiatic blood without insulting any color within the race. This is very, very important, right? And see, this goes into when the prophets, you know, telling us don't cause confusion. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it's like, you know, in our quest to make our group seem better, we're doing that to the exclusion of others, even if we're not saying it, right? You have to make your message crafted in such a degree where you can make everybody feel part of the same demonstration. Islam? All right? Islam, brothers?
Islam.
Praise Allah. It says, the idea of the MSTFA is to unite into one race, all the shades of color, and build up a standard race. You should discourage intermarriage between the European and Asiatic and Asiatics and other races. You should tell the people that it is an honor to be Asiatic and that nothing is wrong with Asiatic skin or olive skin, but bad conditions. Tell them that a well-kept Asiatic woman or Asiatic man is as good as a well-kept European man or European woman. Never allow your followers to have their children play with European dolls, because they will grow up to like European children and they will have them. Discourage Asiatics from having European pictures in their homes, because those pictures will inspire them to become European in their ideas. Inspire them to have pictures of Asiatics who have achieved greatness in their homes. Tell Asiatic parents that they must teach their children Asiatic history, Asiatic pride, and self-respect in their homes to counteract the elementary and high school education that holds up the superiority of the European race. Let the people know that God is not European, nor is he Asiatic, but is a spirit and a universal intelligence, of which each and every one is a part. All of us are a part of that intelligence. Or as the prophet says, a spirit and a part of Allah. Islam, Morris? All right? So now, we're talking about counteracting what is done to our children in the middle school and the elementary schools and the high school educations. It is alleged that the prophet said, get a good European education and I could use you, right? Does that agree with or contradict what the Forerunner said? Get a good European education, I could use you. And then the Forerunner says, we must counteract what was done in the European educational system. Are those two statements contradictory? And if not, how are they not? Islamo, he beat you to the punch, man. Islamo.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Absolutely. When the Forerunner says that we must counteract the influence of the European educational system, and the prophet is alleged to have said, get a good European education, I can use you. Are those two statements contradictory?
On the surface, it seems, in reality, no.
Okay, how so?
The phrase, you can eat the meat, chew the meat, spit out the bone.
Nice.
So they're being in what we call European education, which really just repackaging what we talk about.
Islam. Mm-hmm.
But
that's right.
You know, like architecture, science, English, things of that nature, we can use to build up our society.
Exactly.
And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Forerunner, I don't remember which book it was, but talking about taking the advancement that we have, the education that we have here, and taking it over there to Africa to help them out.
Islam. Praise Allah. Brother Travis, you had a demonstration?
Islam, arise, giving praise to mighty God Allah. I give honors, highest honors to Prophet Ali, give honors to Temple number 19, Grand Sheikh, Heru, and his Sheikh staff, everything that's Moorish and the Moabites. Islam.
Islam. Recognize.
Islam, Sheikh. I think it's in harmony with each other. Understanding the condition that we was in, we didn't have any, we lost our skills and deluded ourselves to beasts, picking cotton and things of that nature. Share that from
Islam.
So in this new era of time, you know, more still have characteristics of those traits. So now you need to develop more skills.
Islam.
And in doing such, these Europeans have laid out a decent blueprint for us to build a basic foundation on, and then now we can grow with our own studies in the more science.
Islam.
Learn what you learn out there, come into more science and let me elevate it.
Praise Allah. Islam. Gratitude, Mo. You know, and it's really that structure. You know what I'm saying? That's what our people are missing. You know what I mean? That linear side. Like, we're great holistic thinkers. Right brain, spirituality, music, arts. Phenomenal that we don't even have to try. We do that playing around. My granddaughter's an artist. She sit over there and just draw beautiful pictures. You know what I'm saying? But now getting that structure to be able to sit still, firstly, right? Sit still and calm my energies and focus on a particular task, right? That if I put a math problem in front of you, it's not good enough that you just give me the answer. How did you arrive at the answer?
Absolutely.
And can you repeat it?
Follow through.
Do it again. So I know that you know. See, that's the left side. We have to work as a race. We have to work on that side. We're not really good there, right? If you know anybody that's involved in business, that's the side you have to work that side. You know, to the point where it gets redundant and boring, and you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
But it's necessary. See what I'm saying? You know, right? Those committee meetings and city council meetings, that stuff is like you sit there. It's not exciting at all. It's not glamorous or any of that, but it's necessary. Right? So it's just, you know, a specific one who has gone through that educational process, go through those halls of learning, and have sat and got that discipline to be able to sit and focus like that, that say, you know what, I'll volunteer for that task to go run for that office to represent on behalf of the people. That's a specific soul who's gone through that. So that's what the prophet was saying, right? And, you know, relative to, you know, what the forerunner saying, you know, that's powerful as well, because now when you're going into those halls, you're going in there with a race purpose. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going in there to get something out to bring back to my people. Like all other free national groups do. Well, an Indian child goes to high school, college, when he graduates, gets his degree, he's coming back to build his community up. Even if he has to go to the hood, like they all come, right? And run these stores and let our people cuss them out all day long, stuff like that. When they close that store, they're going back to their community to bring the finance. Islam, Morris?
Islam.
You know, so that's get a good European education that can use you. You know, working that linear side, you know what I mean? And again, it's like, you know, as race men and women, a lot of times we forget that still, you know, when man honors man, he honors Allah, right? So no matter, like, I give an example, like most of my teachers growing up, you know, in middle school, high school, all of that, most of them were European. I grew up in New Jersey. You know what I'm saying? Most of them was Italians and Polish and Jews and so on and so forth, right? But, you know, I wasn't, you know, I stumbled on a race purpose like when I was like 14. This is like Big Daddy Kane and KRS-One era of hip hop. So, you know what I mean? So it kind of got me studying, you know, that Asiatic purpose, you know, so that's maybe like, you know what, I gotta do something, you know, something for my people. You know what I mean? I didn't really learn that at home. I kind of got that later. You know what I mean? But, you know, I give honors to the ones that, you know, the teacher that taught me mathematics was European, right? And, you know, the interesting part about it, the things that European teacher taught me then still work, despite the vessel that it came through. You see what I'm saying? So a lot of times we can't allow our hate. If somebody taught you something that worked, talk to a lot of brothers that's in the real estate. A lot of them had contact with a Jew somewhere. They might have put, you know, dropped something on them to, you know what I mean? And they don't really tell nobody. But they're like, yeah, a Jewish dude, man, told me how to do such and such and such. There's no shame in that. You see what I'm saying? It's America, it's an immigrant culture. You're gonna learn, you know, you only get that in the South, you know, per se, you know what I mean? Because in Atlanta, you around predominantly Asiatics. Beautiful, I love it. That's why I never left, right? But the reality of it is like, we should not let our hate blind us. You know what I'm saying? You know, because again, when you start dealing with the nations of the earth, they don't all look like you. See what I'm saying? But all of them have a certain respect for you when you conduct yourself in the way that your forefathers taught you to. Islam was? All right, moving forward. It says, and this will be about the last sentence, last paragraph I'll read before I yield the floor. It says, no man has the full intelligence of God, only partial intelligence. Therefore, no man can be God. Neither the European nor the Asiatic man is God. They are particles of God. That more was working. Yeah. Read that. I'm gonna say they are particles of God. Science. Islam? Science. What is the title that Satan gave himself? God. You know what I'm saying? The devil gave himself. So it says, let the people know in them. Let the people know that in them and in themselves only is the power to rise. Let them know that God does not go out of his way to give people positions or jobs or to give them good conditions such as they desire. They must do for themselves out of the fullness of nature that God has created for everybody. God does not build cities, towns, nations, homes, or factories. Men and women build them, and all those who want them must work for themselves and pray to God to give them the strength to do it. Islam, Morris? Islam. So we honor our forerunner, the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, for putting us on the right track, you know, because that set the stage. There's so many things. It's about 5-6 leaders I heard in that demonstration right there that came after him. You know what I mean? And that's what, you know, children are supposed to, you know, mimic their honorable parents. You know what I mean? You know, so we give honor to the ones that did that. Islam, Morris? Islam. At this time, I am going to yield the floor to our beloved brother Raphael Hakeem Bey, whom I did not tell that he was demonstrating.